sometimes there's one fighter blocking the other fighter because they're actually in the same direction that you are. Their sight line, they're in direction. So you have options to look up. So I really like a seat like that. Again, on the risers, going for 500. And last year, I guarantee something about it.
Ironic part was they were for boxing matches like back in the day, and I can barely remember the headliners. I know one was Tapia versus Soto out here in Mandalay Bay, and a few others. But yeah, I always preferred the riser seats like you, man. I'm with you.
Yeah. There is also, if even 500's too much, which I get it, that's a lot of dough. Especially if you're taking somebody, now you're looking at 1,000. Most arenas obviously go 1 level, 2 level, some even go 3, but I would say the first couple rows of the second level also seem to be a price break. Sometimes that can be identified as club seating, but either way, you're looking down towards the cage without being so far away that you can't see a cut or, a key component of the fight that you may want to catch. You should be able to catch a lot of it. Usually if it is a club level, it may be a little bit more, but you sometimes have a waitress. That's very convenient. The bathrooms are a little bit more private, and that means it's quick in and out. Sometimes even the access to get into the arena if you want to stay away from the knuckleheads. Again, another brilliant decision. Now, what happens is those are sometimes owned by season ticket holders of the arena. So, sometimes they like to move them because perhaps they're season ticket holders to the arena, but they're basketball guys or hockey guys or what have you. Maybe fighting isn't their thing, and they put them up. So sometimes you can catch them, not pricing out an event that they could sell for a better price. So always take a look at that as well. Speaking of shows that are coming up, and Dan, you let me know when Goes is done putting out fires.
I'm back. I'm just writing.
Oh, you're back? Okay.
Writing a strongly worded email.
So this is the way the year's going to end. Now I'm just talking pay-per-views here. There's a lot of fight nights. There's a tough finale. There's a big Fox card out in Winnipeg. But as far as pay-per-views, UFC 217 takes place Saturday in New York, the Madison Square Garden. That's followed by UFC 218 on December 2nd. That takes place in Detroit, Michigan. Your headliner there is Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar. Sick card there, by the way. It's all there on MMAjunkie in the Rumors tab. And then to end the year, UFC 219 back here in Las Vegas. I believe it's December 30th. And they're still looking for the main event there, but some fights that have been announced for that card are Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Edson Barbosa, as well as Dominic Cruz versus Jimmy Rivera. So that card definitely off to a good start, still being put together. Now, next year, they've already announced that they're going to be going to Boston, Massachusetts, for what would be UFC 220. Now, that's going to take place on January 20th, the same night as the Bellator card in Los Angeles at the Forum, which is headlined by Rory McDonald and Douglas Lima. Goes and I, wanted to go to that one, and I think we still will. But, anybody that was kind of on the fence, traveling around, I mean, you'll obviously probably have to take a good look at deciding which event you want to go to. The UFC definitely, top to bottom, has more talent, so obviously that'll be a better card. It'll also be a more expensive card, and you'll definitely be in a more, we'll say, colder town on January 20th than obviously LA, which is a little bit more comfortable for some. But anyway, just pointing that out for anybody that wants to jump the gun and start looking into flights and tickets. There are options. And then also, the UFC announced that they're going to Perth, which is on the western end of Australia, complete other side from where Sydney is. And just so you know, from Sydney to Perth, it takes about, I think it's a 5-hour flight, and it's 3 time zones. Now, it's not as big as the United States, but it's still pretty big. So that's huge for Western Australia to get a pay-per-view like that. And we're already hearing that the rumor there may be the winner of GSP versus Michael Bisping would unify with Robert Whittaker. So the good news is that Robert Whittaker is obviously on the mend, and looking to fight. That fight card would be on February 20th. So, or excuse me, February 11th, and that would be UFC 221. So there's some news there for all you hardcore fans that may live in those parts of the world, and have been asking. Coincidentally, Russ from Boston had asked me when are they coming back to Boston, and I just told him I don't know. I mean, I literally had no idea, and hours later that announcement was made. So either he was maybe messing with me and already knew, or it was just a pure coincidence. But huge for Boston and huge for Western Australia, the city of Perth. Now, obviously, the first thing you think about when you think about Boston is Conor McGregor. Is that where he could return? I would say it's a strong possibility if he's not fighting at UFC 219 in Las Vegas to end the year versus Tony Ferguson. Everything's pointing to Tony Ferguson at this point. Now we just got to figure out the date. So if not there, then perhaps in Boston. And then if not there, well, shit, your guess is as good as mine. But what do you think, Dan? What do you think would make the most sense for the notorious Conor McGregor to make his return?
I ironically feel that, to tie in two topics here, that you'd have a better chance of seeing Conor in Boston than the middleweight title defended in Perth. Now, that's kind of a hot take, and the reason maybe the callers can touch it on this is because I guess I could see Bisping. He's got roots in Australia. If he wins, I could see him going over there and doing the unification bout. But if GSP wins, I have a hard time seeing them coax old George to go down to Australia to fight Robert the Reaper Whittaker down there. But that's kind of my take to touch two topics there. But I don't know if the callers may say different.
I suppose GSP could play the card of, well, I did it. I won the second title. I will now hand that back to the UFC, and if Woodley wants some, or whoever's champion at that time wants some, maybe he returns, or maybe it was a quick cash grab, a historical win for him, and he sails off into the sunset. That's the fun thing. Sometimes it's frustrating with all the different branches, to all these topics that we cover, everything that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all realistic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A guy that quit at the top and was gone for 4 years, I mean, I would have never guessed that GSP was just going to up and quit, especially when he was, doing so well and he was still in his early 30s. But when he did quit, I sure as hell didn't think it was going to take him 4 years to return. So there's no crazy scenarios when it comes to George St. Pierre. Anything really can happen.
George.
But you're right. Does he really want to go all the way to Perth, Australia to fight, a young lion like Robert Whittaker? Yes, goes.
I would be shocked if A, he won the middleweight title, and B, if he ever defended it. I don't think he's about defending that belt. I think he just wants to win it, to prove a point. And then I think it's either he's going to fight again and be here for a while, or that's it. But if he does come back, I would say he comes back for that 170. And because think about it, what's a bigger fight for him? Defending that belt, or going down and challenging for another belt, getting back his belt? I think that's where the money is. I could see him maybe doing those two fights and then being done. But I would be shocked if he defended that middleweight belt. And actually, I would be a little disappointed if the UFC knew going in that was his plan and still went through with this.
Me too, but I'm more on your side, Goes. And I've said my bold prediction on this show a couple times, which I'll stick to, is that if we're talking about introducing a 165 and 175 division, we have to get rid of the 170. And I think what better way to ease any troubles or complaints about leaving historical division by using George St. Pierre while he's still here to help seal off the division that he ultimately is the best guy ever at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Goes, just to clarify, you said you'd be shocked if he even won the title, or did you mean to say you'd be shocked if he wanted that he defend it?
I'm picking against him right now. I have this kind of rule where any guy that just 3 years is so long, man. For me to say that guy's going to come out and he's going to win because of reasons going back even further than 3 years, it seems irresponsible to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just can't pick the guy. I'm going to have to pick Michael Bisping based on the fact that Michael Bisping has been performing as of late, and it's a guy with 3 years of rust on him. And even then, that last fight, we were all kind of like, we don't know if you won that fight. Lots of things have happened since then, post-USADA. I'm not trying to throw accusations or anything like that, but there's just too much on the table for me to sit there and say, yeah, George is going to come in and do that. Not to mention he's going up in weight in another weight class that he's never fought at. I feel like it would be irresponsible to pick George St. Pierre.
Damn, call me irresponsible then, because I think that's what I submitted.
Irresponsible?
But I guess I went under the formula of the best GSP versus the best Bisping. Ironically, the best Bisping's really been the last few years. You can't even say, if he was only 25 or anything like that. He was always a solid fighter, but he took it to a new level, in these last few years.
Not to poke
we'll
holes.
See. I mean, we'll see. Luckily, we find out in about 5 days.
Yeah,
not to poke holes or be a negative Nancy, but even then, because I'm with you, man. The best GSP is still the best 170er. We have nothing at 185 on this guy. That's what's so rough about. I want to pick him because I could see him going in there, taking him down the way he usually does, and holding him down. But I just never seen him operate at this weight class, and for him to come off that big layoff, it's too much for me.
Man, guys, this is giving me a flashback to every other George St. Pierre, and again, I've been a listener to the show for forever, and this reminds me of every single George St. Pierre fight of the discussion before it, and that's a good thing. The bad thing is, and this is the thing I wanted to weigh in most today on, maybe the callers can, is that it doesn't feel like we have enough time to unpack this like a normal George St. Pierre fight, like a normal title fight, like a normal. Not there is a normal super fight, guys, but I mean this is one of the best cards in the last half of the year, one of the best cards of the year, right? And what's been a weak year, and it feels like amongst this 11 fight card stretch that it's kind of getting, at least for me, buried in that. Now we're from the media side, guys, so I would like to hear the caller's perspective. Am I crazy, guys, or callers? Am I crazy? Is there an oversaturation effect that we're feeling when we get to these big cards?
I think there is, and I think maybe the lack of heat in the fight is kind of hurting a little bit. Not to mention, like, go on your social media. What is everybody talking about right now? World Series. World Series is on fire. Yeah. People are talking about that right now.
Yeah.
There's pro football. It's starting to shape up now, where now we can kind of see teams' records and go, okay, these guys are starting to get in trouble about not making the playoffs. These guys are looking good. There's hockey, right? Vegas Knights, people are going crazy about that. There's just so many other things going on right now. The title picture's starting to shape up in college football that it's suffering because of that. And if there were a little bit of heat, maybe it'd be enough for you to go, I really got to catch that. But right now there's so much other shit going on that it's rough for this card. And it's a great card.
It is.
That's a good point, because I think today they released the top 4, that are competing for those spots in college football. I know that I was watching a little bit of the shows on ESPN, and that was a hot topic. Also, the trading deadline, if I'm not mistaken, is today for the NFL. Now toss in Game 6 of the World Series, coming off an epic Game 5. Toss in, not to get political here, but everything that's happening with Trump and, the guy investigating Mueller. I mean, that's been pretty crazy as well. So it could be, it goes, that at least clearing a few of the sports hurdles, which would be, this deadline, this announcement of the playoff system, and the World Series. It could be that maybe Wednesday night, Thursday morning, by then we'll have a couple more embeddeds under our belts, and maybe a press conference and a shove or something like that. Maybe things will heat up in those last 48 hours.
If you're a family guy, right? Like, not that guy. If you're just a guy with your family, you have only so many days. If you have kids, that you could say, hey, hon, tonight you handle everything. I'm sitting back and I'm watching the World Series, right? And if there's a Game 7, which there will be a Game 7, you got to pull that shit again, right? And then you got to do it again on Saturday. I want the whole goddamn day to watch this card. Like, certain people can only get away with so much. They're not as sly or slick as us, where we can just make excuses and be able to do this and call this our job. I think it's going to be tough, and I honestly don't think the buy rate's going to be that high.
Whoa. Well, that's okay. I'll tell you what. That's a topic. That's a topic that we should touch on. And I'll tell you why, because, I was having some fun with the junkies. Usually during the weekend, I'll check and see who's getting out of line, check them, own the whole page, and then bounce. But one of the topics was, as far as like the younger generation, I think we'll attribute this to Ernie Simpson. He was saying, well, yeah, but who really remembers GSP? Well, I countered with, I'm not the biggest golf fan, but if you tapped me on the shoulder and said, for $100, can you tell me what Tiger Woods does? He hasn't really golfed much or done shit in the last 4 years, but trust me, that guy'd be handing me a $100 bill, because I'd go, yeah, he's one of the best golfers of all time, and when he's golfing, there's usually still some excitement on these golf courses. And you can say that about like a lot of former athletes. What, Shaq's probably about 4 or 5 years removed. I sure as hell know who the fuck he is. Granted, it's a little easier because he's on TV, but still, You know what I'm saying? So I don't know that people just forgot who GSP is. Now GSP used to average 700,000 buys, and is he going to hit that? I don't know, because he's not world champion GSP. He's GSP coming off a 4-year layoff. But what's the drop off for those 4 years? Is it half at 350? Is it maybe 500,000? I have to believe it'll be pretty decent. I'm shooting for 500,000 is what I think the buy rate will be, because I still think GSP is a presence. Otherwise, he wouldn't still be wearing Under Armour. Otherwise, he still wouldn't be, moving the traffic needle like on our website. And you see that when he does other interviews, same thing. That still has to account for something. Yes, there's new fans. Yes, some fans may have never seen him, but they heard of his ass. And it's backed up by a young lady named Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who's, she's steamrolling her opponents. She's starting to break her own records as far as, being the most dominant female possibly ever in the sport in terms of, being a champion, title defense, this, that, whatever. And you asked about heat goes. There's not necessarily it's not necessarily the hottest flame out there going between Michael Bisping and George St. Pierre. I mean, they are, they've had their moments. There's some backstage stuff going on, some curse words flying back and forth. But all right, even if that one doesn't really have, it's not a two-way street, Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw is. So I don't know. I don't know what your final number is going to be, but I want you guys to take that all into consideration. When we come back, we'll give our predictions for what we think the buy rate is going to be at UFC 217. We invite you to participate, 866-522-2846 with that question. Again, we'll also be talking to Ilima MacFarlane from Bellator on the show. So lots to cover here on the MMA Junkie Radio Show. Stay close. We'll be right back.
charm, compassion, common sense. These guys have none of that. You listen to them, so you're no better. I am awesome, though. They are Gorgeous George and Goes.
SiriusXM is now on Amazon Alexa. Just enable the SiriusXM skill, log into your account, and say, Alexa, listen to the MMA Junkie radio show on SiriusXM. For more information, visit SiriusXM.com/Amazon Alexa. All right, we talked about what the possible buy rate could be for these pay-per-views for UFC 217. Goes, what's your guess?
I'm going to go with 510.
That's a weird number.
I think the price is right.
Yeah. Why not? You want me to just go with even numbers?
510?
Or just 500?
No, that's fine. 510. All right. Dan, what's yours?
I'm going to go with an even 700.
700.
That's not really an even. Okay, I don't know.
Danny?
Wait, what was Goz's?
Mine was 510.
510.
And Dan's was 700.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do 650.
650.
Damn, George, you should have went first.
So we played the middle.
I guess I'll go with. I'm still just gonna stick to fucking 500. I know what Goes is doing, but this isn't the Price is Right, so I'll just stick with 500. All right, we'll just see how that works out. And anybody wants to share theirs, call in 866-522-2846. Dan, you were gonna tie something in before the break as well in terms of GSP and the younger generation.
Well, I like that you guys brought up the points of we're talking about buy rates right now. We're talking about another point that's not really thought of is that how many people remember GSP in this turnover? It's a little different from other sports. We're still a little younger. Perhaps the ink doesn't sink as deep into the into the memory banks, but that's, I guess, to my original point of with the flexibility of the schedule before the UFC had, even if the World Series happened, like Go said, or these other events, which we do have to account for happen, the UFC at least had the flexibility to maneuver around it. We had the countdown shows, which we saw for the St. Pierre Penn, and this St. Pierre versus Bisping is more than a worthy enough fight for that. And those those countdown shows, they would come out kind of week by week to help build you up. And even me, I wasn't a huge George St. Pierre fanboy, but I feel like a George St. Pierre fanboy after going back through the timeline on Fight Pass and watching his footage all weekend, and it just almost upset me as much as it excited me because I knew that not everybody experienced this with the time that it happened, but B, are even going to be able to go back and experience it because of the promotional sheen. I don't think it's doing its job. And yes, we're going to get embeds, and yes, it's not like press conferences or weigh-ins were at a different week back before the UFC had the schedule. I understand that, but at least you had time to digest, maneuver, and build up. So the people that don't know, the people that are watching World Series, they have time to get caught up. They have time to develop their palate and their thirst for it. And I guess that's just my hardcore complaint here. As far as off the top of the show, if any callers want to weigh in and how they feel as fans, with all these shows, does it suffer not just your UFC experience, but does it suffer your World Series, your football? Does it make it harder to keep up? That was my vent for the day.
There you go. All right, let's talk to Hal in Chicago. What's up, Hal? How you doing?
Hey boys, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Well, first of all, I guess I'm irresponsible too. I got GSP, the GOAT. He's going to come back. He's not going to let some buttertooth Brit show him up. It's going to be GSP on Saturday.
Who originally said buttertooth Brit? I forgot.
Good trivia. You guys know? If not, I'll tell you.
Jorge Rivera? That's my guess.
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was spitting venom, but that came from...
Oh, who's this guy?
Russ from Boston. Okay, and who else?
Randy.
You know what the fuck that... Okay.
But...
All right. It's Russ, man.
Oh,
He's a
shit.
Jew.
All right. That's way wrong.
Matis Yahoo's a rapper, George, and he's like a Hasidic Jew. Anyway, C-3PO.
Mm-hmm. He has that robotic voice. He's a robot, I guess. So Aaron from Minnesota.
Bingo. Got that one. All right.
Okay.
Suge Knight.
Larone.
Not Randy.
Larone.
So I'll go with Larone. Yeah.
The best Suge Knight at the Bourbon Bar.
100%.
Man, at the gathering. That was awesome.
Good shout.
Hugh Hefner.
I guess Randy. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Dude, you see Randy always in a picture of horn dogging with like 2 ring card girls or something.
Yeah. No, I just saw him. He was with. I've never met his girlfriend, but he's got a pretty girlfriend. They were in Hawaii, I believe, last I checked it. So I would say Randy. Joe's a married guy, so I don't know how much he's chasing tail or doing whatever he's doing.
And then finally, Glass Joe. Joe from H-Town.
Joe from H-Town.
Got to put on some white shorts. You know what I mean?
You have a prediction on pay-per-views for Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 425,000.
425.
Right, I'm down for 425.
All right, bud. Thanks for the call.
All right, bro.
Easy, Hal.
All right. DJ Tony's up next. What's up, Tony?
Coming at you, gentlemen. What do we have to do to get some Aldo Nova or some AC/DC, anything, even Avril Lavigne, anything but Ace of Base? Really, that's the best Junkie has? Ace of Base?
Well, you have to talk to Danny. I'll let Danny respond.
So what I'm hearing is nothing but Ace of Base today?
I think so.
We're not done with the selection, so it could be that some of those bands you said make a strong push to the second half of the show.
I mean, if we're going to go wimpy, can't we at least go with Alice DJ or something that Dan Tom would listen to? I mean, come on, guys. What do we have to do to get this thing going?
Wow. How many people is he going to insult in one call?
I don't know. He's on a roll.
I know. I've misbehaved. I'm sorry. I guess you guys. I think it's going to be just a little under 500,000. Think of it this way. Every little thing that we do, and then much to wrap it up, we don't really have an opportunity to enjoy the card, you guys.
I can't disagree with anything you just said. I when we don't have a fight card, I'm like, now what? You know, and of course, I don't say that as much in the fall. I do in some of the other seasons. But there are times where I wish a lot of these fight cards were just stacked, man, 1 through 12. And if they were to take some of these high-profile fights from these other fight cards, great. But I trust in the UFC's madness. They've been around now for what, 93, 24 years. And I hate to put the team concept. You know, we're on CBS work. You know, parts of the country, of the world, and giving them cards and giving us what they do, and you know, fine. But they'll be the first to adjust because they like to make money. That's for sure. So if pay-per-views are down like they have been lately, you know, we have seen an upkick in stacked decks. So it could be that right away they're already responding with some of these fight cards that are coming up. I agree, Tony. Maybe like I could probably do with at least 4 less cards per year, maybe 6, kind of more down in the 30 range as opposed to 40 range.
Because my degree's in accounting, so I always look at numbers. Wouldn't you rather buy 6 pay-per-views a year at $99 knowing that all the numbers involved basically come out to about the same, as opposed to paying $60 every month on a card that may not be at its best? Thanks a lot, guys. Happy Halloween and have a great day.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important
if
things...
If you're forced to, then yes, that's the math that works. But you also have the option of declining a card. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the most important things, too, is the way cards have been going with injury. But he does fall off. It doesn't mean I think he's still sell.
We're losing more.
A few things here while I let you guys. On Saturday, of the night went to Derek Brunson and Pedro Munoz. They paid out there in bonus. People were wondering how he did. The Junkie Radio part hits the ground. I think this all come via submission. Francisco Trinaldo defeated Jim Miller. Jim Miller, for at least the next 7 days, has fought the most times in the UFC. Michael Bisping will tie him on Saturday, barring any unforeseen circumstances. But I think the best Jim Miller is in our rearview mirror, and of course Francisco Trinaldo just keeps doing what he does. I mean, he usually takes out most of the guys up until the top 10, top 5, so he's going to have to definitely clear that hurdle. Thiago Santos just hammered Jack Hermanson via TKO strikes. John Lineker defeat.
I want to know
those fights.
I want to know what you guys think is going to happen with Jim Miller. I mean, to me, like, the skill set's still there. It's just a slower version of him. And to his credit, this new generation of fighters, and that probably wasn't the case in this fight, but guys are just faster. They're stronger. You know, they hit harder now. It's just a different game.
Yeah, this is a tough match. Like I said last week, man, Jim Miller, anybody that doesn't know, one of my favorite fighters, you know, of all time. I really enjoy watching that guy fight, and you know, even though I did pick against him in this spot, it was kind of rough to see it, because I don't know if you guys caught it in between rounds 2 and 3. He said something to his corners along the lines of, "I don't have anything
Not feeling
left,"
it or something like that.
Yeah, it was and it's something you would never hear from a warrior like Jim Miller, and that doesn't take away anything from his warrior status. But when you start to hear, this is not the first time we've heard fighters, you know, in this stage of their career start to utter those things, or you know, to their visual performances alone, like Gigi was saying, with maybe the best, probably obviously the best performances are behind him. So yeah, I'm hoping if he does express interest to want to continue fighting from interviews. So I'm just hoping he gets matched up well, because you know, he's a savage. He's Jim Miller, and you look at his resume, guys. He's never got an easy fight. I mean, there were some miles that have been put on him. So I just hope the UFC, Jim Miller certainly deserves it, knowing that he's a guy that won't say no. Hopefully they match make him appropriately from here on out.
You know, it's championship card. There's a PFL card. There's a Bellator card. There's a UFC. So it's a huge, huge weekend for mixed martial arts in North America. I imagine. I mean, I haven't checked, but Access TV usually has something cooking too. All right, we'll be right back, folks.
Yeah, you. Can you tap that rather large fellow on the shoulder?
The radio channel numbers for N. Go to SiriusXM.com/sportsnow, then click Add to Calendar. You'll even get the links to listen directly on the SiriusXM app. That same SiriusXM app, by the way, also houses the MMAjunkie radio show, which is uploaded just minutes after the show's ending. So if you missed any part of the show, you can catch it commercial-free and in HD quality. All right, Danny's going to give us MMA History Today. Follow our good friends on Twitter at MMA History Today. Thank them for supplying us for these facts. They sometimes get it to us before they even release them to the public. Again, on Twitter at MMA History Today. Danny, what you got?
All right, I'll go quick this time. October 31st, 2004. After an 11-month absence from the sport, Hollywood Dan Henderson makes his return and defeats Kazuhiro Nakamura at Pride 28.
Nice. I remember that fight. Dan Henderson, one of the all-time greats, and for a while, man, I thought Nakamura had a bright future in MMA. He came over to the UFC, and things just didn't go his way, but still, man, that guy logged some miles over at Pride. I'd love to know what he's up to. Is he still fighting, or is he even involved in martial arts in any way? So thanks again to our good friends at MMA History Today on Twitter. Let them know you're catching their fun facts and historical figures on the at MMAjunkie radio show. When we come back, we'll keep talking UFC Fight Night 119, everything else that's out there. It's MMAjunkie Radio on SiriusXM Rush 93.
The daytime if you see it.
Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario? Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario?
Ayo, Bo knows this, and Bo knows that. But Bo don't know jack, cause Bo can't rap. Well, what do you know? The dead dog is first up to bat. No batteries included, and no strings attached. No holds barred. No time for move faking. Got to get the loot so I can bring home the bacon. Brothers front, they say the drop can't flow, but we've been known to do that and then some. wanna go get a taco, I direct it from the jump street, meaning from the get-go. Sit back, relax, and let yourself go. Don't sweat what you heard, now act like you know. Yes, y'all.
Yes, y'all.
Who got the vibe? It's the tribe, y'all.
Tribe,
Real
y'all.
live, y'all.
Live, y'all.
Inside, outside, come around.
Who's that?
Brown. Some may I say, call me Charlie. The word is the herb, and I'm deep like Bob Marley. Lay back on the payback, evolve, rotate the gates.
Contact.
Can I get a hit? Hit! Boom, bit with a brother
I always
named
dug
Tip.
this one. All right. It's the second hour of the MMA Junkie radio show. So who's that, Danny? I forgot.
Tribe Called Quest.
Oh.
This is one of my
Yeah, I
favorite
was like-
songs from them too.
So you went with A, so that threw me off because I heard them say Tribe, and I thought, well, wouldn't it just be under T? But okay, A Tribe Called Quest. There you have it. Bands that start with the letter A. I think we're getting a little harder now, right? As far as the musicians involved in the delivery. Hopefully that's good enough for Tony.
A little harder?
You know, in terms of like, he was saying that, you know, we were a little soft with, what was it, Ace of Base?
Oh, yeah. We got to spread it out. Got to spread the love a little bit.
Now, Tony was saying the band that Garth played with was U2. I think that either came up in the pre-show or early part of the show.
That's
We were
right.
discussing it somehow. So, he's got it down, man, when it comes to music trivia. He's pretty good. Just want to let everybody know, man. I don't know about Dan or Goes, but if you guys... I tried playing a lot of dogs on Saturday. I got fucking waxed.
Dude,
I had a terrible day, except for the co-main and the main. I made a little bit of money back, but otherwise, man, it was not a good night for me in terms of MMA. And it wasn't much of a strategy, but I really felt like, you know, some of them might do okay. And I hadn't really done that in a while, was let me just go with the dog. But I started with it, stuck with it, and I just could not catch a break.
Yeah, my parlay pieces hit, which saved my butt. But from my own personal bank, I actually ended up just breaking even for what that's worth. But yeah, a lot of the straight plays, you know, took some dogs and took some favorites that were playable, you know, like Hermanson. But like, you know, we talked about recap, you know, took some losses as well. So it seemed like everybody, like, I don't know how the junkie picks fared. I heard John Morgan talking about his. He said he got waxed on his picks too. So I think that was kind of across the board. I think I might have went, you know, 8-4 or something total on the card, which is, you know, C minus or something, however that averages out to. But yeah, don't feel too bad on that one.
All right. As far as that card, and then I think I'll be done talking about the card. I think Covington at some point might be a topic that you know will be hot for the next week or two. If anybody wants to bring that up, that's fine. Vicente Luque did definitely look a lot better than I remember him. He defeated Nico Price. Antonio Carlos Jr. looked great against Jack Marshman. Jack Marshman's not a world beater, a future champ, or anything, but he's a tough out. And I mean, this guy just sliced right through him. So if you look at his record, you know, that loss to Dan Kelly kind of set him back. I think there's a no contest in there somewhere, but he's got he's got 5 solid wins, and I think he's starting to progress. Is Antonio Carlos Jr., a.k.a. Shoeface.
Dude, we know those names because we're the hardcores, right? But what have they done as far as gaining traction amongst the casual fan? Are they doing enough? Does the Brazil fights, does that hurt him more? Like, in other words, if you're him, do you say get me on a main card in the States?
Kind of falls into what we're talking about with the oversaturation argument. Is if you're going to have all these shows, that means some of these shows are going to be regional, and if you're going to have regional shows, well, then you're probably going to have to tie your regional talent. And if there aren't big names like kind of George was talking about in the earlier show, to be flexible, where you could put this name on this card to beef it up, and this we don't have that option. So now you even more so you have to keep these guys like Antonio Carlos Jr. To your point, could possibly be something, a young, real talented guy in a division that needs younger talent.
Cool nickname.
Yeah, cool nickname, everything. But again, you know, how much of it are these guys being regulated to their own markets? Is it kind of a double-edged sword there, them being kept in their own markets like this?
I think you got it, Dan. I'm looking at the record right now. So this guy came through the Ultimate Fighter. He won. I think it was one of the seasons, Ultimate Fighter Brazil 3. I think the heavyweight tournament. If you recall, he started off there. So then he goes to light heavyweight, where he had done some of his early career fights. Loses to Patrick Cummins. Then he drops to middleweight, beats Eddie Gordon. He has the no contest versus Kevin Casey, and then the loss to Dan Kelly. Up until that point, he did have a couple fights in the United States and a couple in Brazil. I think he started off in Brazil because he was the Ultimate Fighter champion from Brazil. So remember, Brazil's a hot market for them, along with the United States, along with Mexico, Australia, Canada at one point. So I think what they want to do is definitely feature them there, and if not, okay, at some point they got to bring him over to the United States. But then he did the fight out in Brisbane, Australia, and that's the one that he lost. So he's had to pick himself up from that one. He had 2 fights in North America, and then he's back to Brazil. Now, if he continues winning, it could be that, like what you were saying, Dan, they're playing him to the market. Remember, Anderson Silva can't fight forever. Neither can Vitor Belfort. A few of those have done it for a while. Shogun's another one that I believe is benefited by, by some scheduling, some friendly scheduling over there. But who's going to replace those guys? That's the question. Aldo, he's not what he was at one point. Either's Barao. Cyborg did great out there, but now they got to bring probably her back to North America. So that's a tough game that the matchmakers have to play.
Yeah,
and I think that's what they're doing with Shoeface. Is the more popular he goes, if they have to, maybe they will feature him in Brazil. If he becomes a pay-per-view star, then maybe they send him over this way. But either way, again, I stick to my point. I thought he looked really good. I thought he was one of those breakout guys. Jared Gordon defeated Hakron Diaz. I'm not so sure about a 30-26. I thought Hakron took one of them. But regardless, the judging was a little questionable. Diaz, not only was he just outgunned, I mean, his gas tank was depleting pretty early in the second round. You know what I was impressed with, though? And get this. I thought Jared Brooks won his fight. It was a split decision loss. I thought he won 2 rounds to 1. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm impressed with that Divisian Figueiredo. I mean, very athletic. He's got a lot of size for the division. I think he's 13-0 now. I think this guy could be something, man. I don't know that I'm ready to say, oh, he's the one that takes out Mighty Mouse. But I think this was, he's going to get another good fight coming up. But he's so athletic that I think he might be, a future contender down the road. I'm excited about seeing him in his next fight.
Dude, I don't even know what that guy looks like, George. When you say the guy that could defeat Mighty Mouse, what does he even look like? Because is he going to be a better striker than him? Probably not. A better wrestler? Maybe I could see that. A better ground game? I don't know. I really think the guy that beats Demetrius is just going to have to beat him on a bad night because that guy's prepared for everything.
That is true, but what makes this guy Figueiredo pretty impressive is that, saying in last week's show, he's one of those few flyweights who, and I picked Jarek Brooks, by the way, and thought Jarek Brooks won, but Gigi's right. I was really impressed because he's one of those flyweights where he does have the commodity where he can finish on the floor and on the feet. Now, it feels like we're rolling the dice, like Go said, when we're trying to picture the prototypical guy to beat DJ because we haven't seen it at flyweight yet. But like Go said, if it's going to be a guy that catches DJ on a bad night with that line of thought, well then I would feel maybe not comfortable, but better with a guy like Figueiredo who has size,